Hey everybody, it's Captain Nabs and welcome to yet another FSEconomy tutorial video. Today we're going to tackle one of the last topics I haven't really discussed yet in the FSEconomy world, groups. In FSEconomy, groups are a simple yet powerful tool. An FSEconomy group is almost like a corporation. It has the ability to do almost anything that a person can except the actual day-to-day work. A group can own anything an FSEconomy pilot can own. A group has its own bank account. It can also collect and distribute assignments. FSEconomy's developers made the groups concept very simple, but this allows them to be very flexible in how each individual user wants to use a group, whether it's to run a realistic air services company or perhaps just to share some resources among friends. Groups can do it all. As you have probably guessed, groups are mostly managed from the Groups menu. Through this menu, you can create, join, leave, delete, and manage groups and their activities. Anyone who's an FSEconomy user can create a group, and thousands of users already have. If you check under the Groups All Groups tab, you'll see a list of all the public groups in the FSEconomy world. Let me just start scrolling through the list to show you how many are here. Hundreds upon hundreds of different groups that have been created and publicly published for you to see and in many cases join. Note that you can join any of these existing groups or you can create your own. And yes, you can be a member of as many groups as you can keep track of. Note also that each group has a unique name and also a description. These descriptions range from simple 3-word descriptions to perhaps longer descriptions that are advertisements for what a company will do and how you can make money out of them. So first let's create a new group for you. If we go under the Groups and My Groups button here, you'll see a list of groups that you are currently a member of, including any groups that you actually own. Creating a new group is fairly simple. Click the New Group button. Perhaps a little too obvious, right? So this brings you to the New Group page. On here you can configure your new group and create it when you press the Update button. So first you have to name your group. Your group can have pretty much any name you want, but the key rule is that it has to be unique from any other group or user of the FSEconomy world. So you can't name the group the same as your username or any other username. It has to be completely unique from every other group name and username out there in the FSEconomy world. And of course below that is the description field where you can describe your group for the world. This description doesn't really do too much except just show up on the lists of groups. So on your My Groups list or on your All Groups list, the description will show up next to the group name, just so that you can remind yourself of the purpose of your group, or you can use it through the public group list as an advertisement for what your group is all about. Below this is the default pilot fee for members of your group, how much commission you're going to pay your pilots. It's going to be a number from 0 to 100%, and we'll talk more about that when we get into talking about how pilots are paid. Below this is a list of rental bans, so you can list any number of users here, separated by space, that are no longer allowed to rent your aircraft. It is possible for users to abuse rented aircraft by perhaps by running more expenses for the owner of the aircraft than they actually make in rental fees for a particular flight. So if you find people are abusing your aircraft, and it doesn't happen very often in the FSEconomy world, but it can happen, it is possible to do it. So if someone is abusing your aircraft, you can ban them from renting your aircraft by putting their name here. We have 2 checkboxes down here as well. The first one here, make joining group public. The second one, show group in group overview. So we'll talk about the second one. The group overview is just the list that we had back here of all groups. So this basically makes your group publicly visible on the list of all groups. And then make joining the group public allows you on this all groups list, if your group is visible here, to have a join button next to it so any user can see your group and decide to try and join it. They can press the join button to apply to your group. They don't automatically become a member, you still have to approve them, which is one of the great things about the system. There's no point really in having a group that people can publicly join if it's not publicly listed. So if you want people to publicly join your group, make sure you also check that list in the public groups list as well. When you're happy with all of your options, then you can go ahead and hit update, and that creates your new group. Once you've created the group, you'll see it here in your list of groups. Here it is right here at the top, and also you'll see it in the public list of groups. If I go to the public list and scroll all the way through until I get to the C's, more or less, somewhere here, there it is. There's my test group. You'll notice, of course, there is no join button, even though I made it public. And of course, the obvious reason why I don't have a join button is because I'm already a member of this group. I own the group. Otherwise, the join button would appear right here if I was not a member of this group. And anyone else who looks at this list will see a join button there next to the group name. So once you've created a group, you are the owner of the group. You can go into it in your list here, and if you're an owner of the group, you can edit the group, which takes you back to the same screen we saw before where you can change the basic information about the group. You also, as the owner of the group, can also transfer or delete the group. So deleting the group is obviously pretty self-explanatory. It eliminates the group from existence, and the name is freed up for anybody to use again. Transferring it allows you to transfer ownership to another person. You'll see a big warning here because they want to make sure that you are aware of this. Once you've transferred a group to another person, you no longer own that group. Only one person can own a group, and that person is the ultimate person in charge of that group. So be very careful with transferring ownership to other people because they will control everything that that group controls and could ultimately kick you out if you are no longer the owner. Speaking of owners, there's actually 3 levels of staff to a group. Let's look at an example group here. The member is the lowest level of staff in a group. They are the average line pilot, the average employee. They can't really do much in terms of managing a group. Mostly what they can do is they can work for the group, they can earn money for a group, they can fly the airplanes for a group. Staff are kind of the middle management level of a group. Someone who's a staff has the ability to generally manage the group. They can usually perform financial transactions. They can buy things, sell things, manage the money in the group's bank account. They can also promote other members to staff or demote other members from staff. The one thing you can't do as a staff member is do anything to the owner. So the owner is the highest level in a group, and that person basically can hire and fire any staff member that they want, promote or demote any staff member they want, but they can never be demoted. They always have full control of all the actions of the group and can eventually fire all the members in the group if any of them are abusing the group. So management of the groups is handled from this group membership screen. You can select any user that you want. You can change their staff role or change their member role, or you can even remove them from the group altogether. You can also check a number of members and even pay them a certain amount of cash, or even invite a member directly. So if you do not have a public group, or you just have someone that you would like to invite specifically to be a part of your group, you can send them a direct invitation just by typing in their name and hitting the invite button. For staff to manage assets of a group, basically you'll use the same menu buttons that you use to manage your own personal assets, except you'll now select your group. So for example, if I want to manage aircraft that belong to one of my groups, if I highlight the aircraft button here, you'll see it now lists all of my groups. So I could click on the aircraft button itself to manage my personal aircraft, or if I wanted to manage aircraft that belong to my group, then I could click on any one of these buttons. So for example, my new tutorial video group has no aircraft, but here's the management screen, and if I did have an airplane, if I purchased one, then I would see it here and I could manage it here. Likewise, if you click purchase aircraft and you happen to have enough money to buy an aircraft, you can select to purchase it for your personal account, or you can select to purchase it for one of your group accounts, and then the money will be taken from the group account and used to pay for that airplane. Likewise, you can manage FBOs using the FBO screen, and again, selecting the group that your FBO actually belongs to. So in this case, my Manitoba Flight Services group is the one that runs all of my FBOs, and here it is with the one FBO that I do own from my previous video. So you'll see most of these buttons here actually will allow you to have access to your groups. Of course, whenever you do an action on behalf of a group, so example, if I order supplies for my group here, that money would not come out of my personal bank account, but because it's a group managed asset, all the money that you spend here would have to come out of the group. So how do you get money into a group? Well, you have to go to the banking page. This is the one button that doesn't actually have a flyout menu, but you just go to the banking page and all of your groups and their bank accounts are listed here. As you can see, the new group that I created has $0. It has zero money in the bank account. It has absolutely no assets. So if I wanted to perhaps manage my group, I would have to, and give it some money to manage, I would have to transfer it potentially from one of my other accounts. So I could transfer money, whatever I needed to perhaps seed my operation and get started. And there we go. Now I've transferred $1,000 from my personal account to the group account, and I can use this to now purchase something, although $1,000 won't buy you much in the FSEconomy world. But that's just to show you how it would work. Goods can also be managed through the goods menu, or if you want to buy goods from an airport, when you're on an airport screen, type in any airport you want. I just type in Winnipeg, and at the bottom of the screen where you can buy supplies, you'll notice that for any number of groups that you are now a member of, you can also buy things directly for that group. The buy button is just for you personally, or buy for your various groups that you are a member of, that you're a staff member of, and that you have control of the money for anyways. So all of these screens for managing your various group assets work the same as they do when you own an asset personally. So you can see my videos about aircraft, FBOs, and goods to see more about how to specifically manage those particular items. So one of the most important aspects of group management is, of course, how are we going to pay the pilots that fly for us and generally earn us all of our money? And there's two ways to pay pilots in a group. The first one you saw was on the group membership menu. So if I go to memberships for my group, you'll see that I can select to pay the members of my group, of course, there's only me right now, a certain amount of money, and I can put a little comment like monthly salary or whatever, and I can pay however much I want out of the group bank account, say $1,000, and then that money is transferred to all the people that you selected, possibly all the members of the group. Of course, the problem with paying a regular salary is that it doesn't really incentivize people to do all that much work in FSEconomy. The better way to pay pilots is to use the pilot fee, which is basically a commission for flying revenue flights for a pilot. So again, if you remember, when you go back to the My Group screen and you hit edit, you'll see the pilot fee here can be set to whatever you want. Let's set it to an example of, let's say, 30%. If the pilot fee is 30% and a pilot completes a flight that pays $1,000, the group automatically pays the pilot 30% of that, or $300. The group gets to keep the remaining $700, but the group also has to pay all the expenses for performing the flight. So, for example, if it costs $1,000 and the aircraft the pilot rented cost $250, and maybe he paid $150 as well for fuel, and of course there have got to be handling fees associated with this, which are probably going to be $100 for a $1,000 trip. Now, after the group has paid the pilot and all the rest of these fees, the group is only making a $200 profit on this $1,000 flight. That's with a pilot fee of 30%. Let's say we increase this pilot fee all the way up to 70%, and then we did that same flight. A pilot flew a flight for us for $1,000 worth of revenue. We've already paid them $700, and if we had these same expenses still, $500 worth of additional expenses, we've now lost $200. We have to pay out $200 more than we made on this trip as a group. So you have to be very wary about setting the pilot fee too high. If the pilot fee is too high, there's a good chance you're going to lose money every single time somebody does a trip for the company. That being said, however, pilot fees are the best way to motivate pilots because they share the revenue in the trip. They make pilots want to do the trip, and they want to make pilots want to do the more lucrative trips. The more lucrative the trip, the more the pilot makes. Commissions are very effective sales motivators. Just be careful about setting that too high. Note that in order to fly an assignment for a group, one of two things has to happen for the pilot. So the first thing, let's just pick a random assignment here, and let's also rent an airplane, and go to the My Flight page. You'll notice now at the top of this page, now that I have an assignment and an aircraft rental selected, you'll note that I'm flying this for my personal user account. However, I can also opt to fly for any of the groups that I work for. If this is the case, then the group will get the revenue from the flight, $970 here, and then that group will pay me whatever the pilot fee is when I finish the flight. So out of the $970, I'll get the 30% if I fly it for my group here, Captain Nab's Tutorial Video Group. The nice thing about doing that, of course, is that you know exactly how much you're going to get paid. You're going to get exactly the commission and no more. None of the expenses are all going to come out of your bank account either, so you know exactly how much you're going to make from each flight. The other way to fly an assignment is by selecting group assignments. So a group assignment is an assignment that's created or claimed by a group. So if I go to an airport page and I select flights, let's select all the flights here that are going to Churchill, Manitoba, and then I go to the bottom of the list, and instead of adding them to my flight, I add them to my group. You'll notice now that the assignments are no longer available at the Winnipeg Airport page. They are only available on the assignments page for my group. So this group has now claimed these assignments, and any pilot in the group can view these assignments and fly them. However, the general public can no longer see them. These have been basically contracted out to my group, and my group is going to try and find a pilot to fly them before they expire. So if a pilot who works for your group selects any of these group assignments that have now been reserved by your group and adds them to their particular flight, that flight is automatically flown for their group. So let's add selected to my flight. You'll see my name now appears here on this list because I've now added them to my flight. And if I go to my flight, you'll see that I am automatically now flying it for my group. I can no longer fly this as a private flight because this is a group assignment. It has to be flown for this group and no other group. So you can go through airports and claim flights for your particular group and let your pilots fly them. If they expire, of course, then nothing happens. They just simply disappear off of the list. But it takes time to go through and select various assignments. So if you want to create a list of assignments for your pilots in your group to get together and fly, then you can do it that way and create a whole list of flights in your particular group that are now group assignments. You can also create assignments for your group transporting the goods that belong to the group between airports. So if you go under the goods page for a group that actually owns some goods, and if I go click new assignment, I can now create assignment for my group, and you'll see I now have these open assignments that can be now flown for my particular Manitoba Flight Services group. So these are now visible for anyone in my group to pick up and fly. However, the important thing to remember when you're creating these goods assignments is they also do appear publicly. So even though they're kind of listed as a group assignment initially, they're also only created publicly here. If I wanted to make sure that they were only available to my group, I would have to claim them all for my group. Like so. And now they're all listed only for my group and are gone from the airport page. The last kind of flight you can create is called a generic flight. So if you come to the group assignment page and you hit the new assignment page, what you can basically do is create a flight that doesn't carry anything in the FSEconomy world. So you can use your imagination if you want and say that you have a charter that goes from one place to another. And you can set any pilot fee that you want for flying this. And as long as the pilot flies this, your group will pay any expenses associated with it and will also pay the pilot a fee. You could use this to create ferry flights. You could use this just to simulate airline operations. However, your FSEconomy group will not generate any revenue from this. They will just have to pay all the expenses from this. So useful for creating perhaps things like ferry flights to get aircraft moved from place to place, but otherwise not a hugely useful option. But it does exist there as an option. You can create these generic group assignments and pay your pilots whatever you want to pay for them. You can see here on the group assignment page as well, of course, that you have the ability to add assignments to your flight from the group assignments page, and as a staff member you can also cancel assignments, so you can return the group assignments to the public domain or even delete group assignments. So you can take this group assignment I created and just delete it and it no longer exists. You can also transfer assignments down here at the bottom to other groups. So if you create them in one group or claim them by one group and perhaps want to transfer them to another group that you're a member of, you can select a bunch of assignments up here and transfer them to a very specific group. So that's basically it for my description of groups today. As you can see, groups offer you tons of capabilities within the FSEconomy world to share your experience with others. How you choose to use those groups is limited only by your own imagination. Most people tend to create an airline, buy some airplanes, hire some pilots, and others may simply use these groups to pool their resources and maybe buy some aircraft among a couple of friends that they can share and fly through the game world. Some people will use different groups to differentiate various assets that they own. So they may have one group that owns their airplanes, one group that owns their FBOs, and keep track of the financial performance of each of their assets in that way. The relatively open way that groups have been administered in this FSEconomy world allows users to really kind of create the group that they want and set up systems to work how they envision their group working. So go on, get out there and set up your own group, or maybe join some of your friends' groups in FSEconomy. FSEconomy is truly a lot of fun because you're operating in a world that's populated by tons of other people. So if you can't beat them, join them.